Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise, you get to air your point of view. We are an independent media outlet that, unlike mainstream media beholden to corporations, we only owe allegiance to you. Remember, you can also send me a tweet at EGBERTOWILLIES. That is at Egberto Willies. Let us engage. It is Politics Done Right. Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willies, your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you, as usual. But look, today it's quite serious. Deidre Scott, welcome aboard. Look, this is a serious matter that we need to discuss, and I have a whole lot of material to cover. And also, I have a guest that's coming in to talk about city planning, and it includes stuff about defund the police, etc., etc., etc. So anyhow, let's get started. Title of the show today, as seen on the screen: City planner, author talks defund the police and more. Atlanta murder by cop in perspective. Rayshard Brooks would be alive if good versus predatory policing was in effect. Dr. Paul Buskirk, city planner, author, opines on defund the police, inner city, and more. Cops' actions more than ever make defund the police movement a must. And I know a lot of you are saying, Egberto, what the hell are you talking about? You want us to lose this election? You know, all those people that vote, those older people that vote, are the law and order people. If they were the law and order people as you thought they were, which we all should be to some extent, you know, do you think the police departments across this country, do you think everybody around the country would be this scared that they're actually starting to defy police unions? Folks, there's something happening. There's something happening, and it starts with the letter G, Gen Z, the letter G, Gen Y, meaning millennials, and younger Gen Xers. They are the vast majority of the voting population, and they are getting activated. And if they get activated, so long, baby boomers, so long, older Gen Xers, the country is a-changing. And no amount of racist fascism that Donald Trump is putting out there can go against that momentum if we seize the moment. We are still at a critical point, but if we seize the moment. So there must be a different paradigm that is anathema to hunting people of color, and specifically black men, than policing as we know it today. If after the daylight assassination of a black man, even as the killer cop knew he was being videoed, did not stop the murder by another cop a few days later of another unarmed, nonviolent black man. If it illustrates an already metastasized cancer, it's out. It's out. It doesn't matter that we've seen them murder on camera. It doesn't matter that Philando Castile said, "Sir, I have a license to carry. I have a license to carry. May I show you the license? I'm going for it," and you blow my head off. It doesn't matter that Michael Brown, a kid, a big kid, just for his being, that occurred to Michael Brown. It doesn't matter that Trayvon Martin, a citizen, could just go ahead and do as he pleases and get off. It doesn't matter that Ahmaud Arbery, two Hicks decided to come and and hunt him like an animal, and then say, "Oh my God, it was just he did something that everybody did." When my house was built, there were people walking into my house day in and day out. I never thought about my neighbors killing them, and there were people walking in and out of that house. I didn't see these guys go after the white folks who were walking into those houses. They shouldn't. They needn't have done that. But they did. After we discussed, or beforehand, the body is too infected to be made whole. It is time to morph from policing as we know it to a group of bodies that keep all Americans safe. Where we have mental issues, we send mental people out. When we have security issues, we send security people out. When we have violent issues, we send sensible, a small number. We reduce the size of these police forces, a sensible size to take care of them. If we want to be concerned about the military actions, that's what we have a National Guard for, not a police force. A National Guard when it needs to be instituted. Yes, Egberto Willies is coming in favor now of the moniker, defund the police. Defund the police. They are now necessary it is an existential problem for people of color, specifically black men. You know, I want you to, for those of you who sometimes wonder when I talk about the changing in the country, you know, I want to play the first part. The first video I want to play you is something I just heard on MSNBC, and I said, let me go ahead and cut it real quickly. Check it out.
This issue is quickly becoming a close second in terms of the breadth and speed of public approval.
Yeah, I think it's moved faster than a lot of people anticipated, Brian, and that leaves the president, again, sort of on an island in his own country. Where we're just seeing people move on. You know, Make America Great Again was a nod to nostalgia and sort of to a country that was more white and to the fears of people who were unsettled by a changing country. What we're seeing, at least in terms of the polling, we saw it a couple of years ago on the gay marriage issue, and we're seeing it now with systemic racism, is a very fast awakening to an issue that doesn't affect people personally, but affects people they know, affects the country more broadly, and attitudes are changing, although the president's attitude is not changing, it doesn't seem. He just doesn't really seem to be on very firm footing with this issue, Brian. And NBC News did great reporting, obviously, about the president saying to folks as he watched the protests, "Those are not my voters," he reportedly said about the people in the streets. Well, if his voters are the people who oppose the protest, as I just mentioned a moment ago, and that's the only people who are his voters, he's got about 26% of the country on this issue on his side.
He's got about 26% of the people on the issue on his side. In other words, yes, the country is changing. Yes, it is the younger folks. And yes, those are the people who, those activists like myself, older Gen Xers, baby boomers, we have to make sure and not be there ready to assist our Gen Zs, our Gen Ys, and our younger Gen Xers. But you know what? We didn't do a damn good job for them at all. We screwed up the economy for them over the last 20, 30 years. Well, actually, since Reagan, we screwed up the economy for them. We took away their future well-being. We wonder why they're living with us now. We wonder why they're in the condition that they're in. We didn't do a damn good job. We didn't. And with the policing and all the crap that we've allowed to come across, law and order, starting with Nixon, law and order president, and all these fearful people. What it really meant is law and order for black folks who we wanted you to fear unnecessarily. Of course, that is kind of silly, right? If there's anybody who needs to fear somebody, it is black folks who need to fear others. They're the ones that were enslaved. They're the ones that Jim Crow worked against. They're the ones that get their heads bashed in. But you see, that is the insanity of racism. We should never be racist because the insanity shows up. The insanity shows up. But before I forget, I want to bring up an issue, and I'm going to a video that you got to see. It's going to be the final moments of the video, but I need to show you for a specific issue. But anyhow, the Supreme Court today upheld, or not upheld, but they solved the fight between two lower courts that made sure that people could not be fired because their employer found out they're gay or anything like that. And I'll tell you something that we have to be cognizant of. If those Supreme Court justices, specifically Roberts and Gorsuch, did not see that America was getting active, that America was being activated by by what we've occurred with George Lord Floyd, as well as what's occurring now, I can rest assured that they would not have come across this easily to support that. But like I said, America is a changing, and they would not take the chance to continue the suppression, to continue that thing about holding people by the neck, in this case, figuratively. But anyhow, I want to jump, and the reason I'm going kind of quick is that I have a long interview, not a long, but an interview that I need to get to in a minute. But here's the deal. Remember this. When that officer was interrogating Rayshard Brooks, there were many instances where that could have de-escalated. And I've seen that exact type of de-escalation occur in my neighborhood. But we'll talk about that in a little bit in the other clip that I have here. But check this out and we'll talk about it.
I can just go home. I have my daughters there right now. My daughter's birthday was yesterday.
All right. Hold on, Mr. Brooks. Will you take a preliminary breath test for me? It's yes or no.
I don't want to refuse anything.
It's yes or no. It's completely up to you.
Yes, I will.
Okay. Just wait here while I grab it. What kind of drinks did you have?
I'm not sure. It's something she ordered. She said top shelf or whatever.
Top shelf what?
I'm not sure. It was, like I said, it was her birthday, and
You had about 1.5 drinks, but you don't remember what kind of drinks they were?
no, sir.
All right.
I really don't, Mr. Ross.
All right. I think you've had too much to drink to be driving, so put your hands behind your back for me. Here, put your hands behind your back. Hey, stop fighting. Stop fighting. Stop fighting. You're gonna get tased. You're gonna get tased. You're gonna get tased. Stop.
Come on, man.
Stop. You're gonna get tased.
Mr. Ross.
Hey, hands off the taser.
Stop.
Hands off
Stop
the
fighting.
taser.
Stop fighting.
Hands off the taser. Stop fighting. Taser. 63.
Okay, I didn't want to get to the gunshot portion, but right after that, on that firing, then he runs off. He gets shot in the back. They already made sure this guy had no lethal weapons on him. This guy went ahead and as soon, he wants to arrest him. He wants to arrest him. That's what they came for. They came for the hunt. So he wants to arrest him. Putting a handcuff on, yes, you should probably go ahead and acquiesce to some extent. But a lot of folks now are thinking, wait a minute, they kill us when they have us in cuffs and they kill us otherwise. Let me go for it. Let me run to hell out of Dodge. There is a reason why he would have done that. And as far as the taser, he said, I'm going to tase you. He holds the taser. He didn't grab the taser out of the guy's holster. He didn't want to be tased. He doesn't think he should be arrested. Now, again, yes, he will be charged with, obstruction to arrest or whatever they call it. But here's the real issue. The real issue is it shouldn't have gotten there. And I want to play you this part and we'll take it on the other side. I just got through watching the body cam video of the officer as he interrogated Rayshard Brooks. Now, what was quite obvious in that interview is that both sides, both the officers and Rayshard Brooks, they were very civil in their conversation. But it was clear from the beginning that the officers were trying some sort of entrapment in the way they spoke to him, in the way they wanted him to say that, yes, I am drunk, I shouldn't be driving the vehicle. Look, this guy was at 1.08, I believe is the number, which is a tad bit above the level that calls you drunk. I think more than anything else, this guy was tired as hell, and then the alcohol made it that much more. It's dangerous. He shouldn't be behind the wheel. Let's go ahead and play the video of the press conference today. I cut it up in pieces, and then I'll take it on the other side.
And now there's a question of, was it reckless or should he have used that force? Let me tell you and show you why shooting in a crowded parking lot is so reckless and so unnecessary of what he did. A witness today sent us his vehicle, which was hit by one of Officer Rowe's bullets while he and his kids were in the car. A couple feet up, and we would have had another loss of life. So trying to justify the actions of shooting at Mr. Brooks as he's running away in a crowded Wendy's parking lot when you can easily catch him later for what started off as a very non-confrontational situation. And people ask, how could this have ended? Why did he resist? Why it could have ended there? Well, it also could have ended here. I can walk. My sister's house is right here. That's how this could have ended. It didn't have to go to that level, and that's what we're saying in America with policing, is this type of empathy is gone. The courtesy of an officer, it wasn't like he was called there because Mr. Brooks had been swerving and was a danger to society. The first call was because a man was asleep. Where is the empathy in just letting him walk home? That's what policing is supposed to be, no matter what color you are. But as they said, that's broken, that's gone. We don't see that often, and we definitely don't see it in the African-American community. So just like the protests before, that's what we're demanding. It's not just laws and policy changes, but a mental change in policing, which is missing. We're looking forward to the DA's findings in this situation, and the only thing that we can ask for is some semblance of an idea of justice, because there is no definition anymore of what it is. But what we know right now is that a man's life was taken when it should never have happened. If people are asking, well, why would he resist when they were trying to put him in handcuffs? Well, they put George Floyd in handcuffs and he was subsequently killed. So just getting put in handcuffs, if you're African American, doesn't mean, oh, you're going to get nicely taken to the back of a police car. So, especially watching this video of George Floyd over and over again, his reaction may have been, I'm not getting put in handcuffs. So we can't just toss it out because he resisted.
This is something that is not new. It's not just with this George Floyd. All of us, I know every black man standing behind me and woman too, we have all been dealing with this from birth. So that's a trauma that is deep. It's not something that just started 2 months ago. I still today dress like I dress, do what I do. I still feel nervous around police, and that shouldn't be the case. If you feel that way and then you see all of these things happening, of course you're going to feel some kind of way when the police come up to you and you're not in the perfect state of mind at that point in time.
And if you are black, the first thing you think is, what is going to be the outcome from that? Myself, that is exactly how I feel as well. Let's talk about de-escalation. They could have allowed this guy to go ahead and walk to his sister's home and kind of make sure they spent 40-something minutes with him or so. Let him walk. Give him a drive home. They do it. You know, I'm here in Kingwood, a friend of mine, at a McDonald's. A drunk 18-year-old rammed his car. The police and everybody's over there. The police officer walks over to him and say, could you not file a report and just kind of take care of this? His father will take care of this because, you know, he's just starting and it'll affect his college career. These things are done. I live in a mostly white community where there's a park behind here, and they catch the kids with the kegs of beers all the time. They let it go, tell them to go home. No, this wasn't a friend. Goes ahead, wrecked the car and left the scene of the wrecked car, and then came back walking. They didn't even attempt to arrest the person here in my neighborhood for leaving the scene of an accident or anything like that. Policing. And, you know, I'm not saying the police shouldn't do what they're doing in my community and in other communities. I'm saying that should be done in all communities. But whenever they are in these minority communities, they are going in there to hunt. They're going in there to hunt. Most of them don't live in these communities, and they see these people in these communities as others. And whenever there is a call, we are there to hunt. And when we go to hunt, we either leave with a dead person or somebody in shackles. That is how they see these communities. And until we change that mentality, when folks talk about defunding the police, it's not about eliminating the police. It's about changing the entire paradigm of how policing is supposed to occur to ensure that people's rights are maintained, to ensure that policing does exactly what it is supposed to do, and that is policing and keeping us safe. It is that simple. It is that simple. And we don't need to have these. First of all, I always say we don't need nice cops. We don't need all of that. We just need them to follow the law, and we just need to rearrange policing so that where we need people with guns, that's where we get people with guns, and otherwise we don't. England doesn't have this sort of a problem. The UK doesn't have this sort of a problem. Canada doesn't have this sort of a problem. In the UK, they don't even need to carry arms. You know why? Because most people don't need a confrontation with a cop. In fact, most cops in the United States never ever use their service revolver, ever. Most of them have never, they have gone through their entire career without shooting at anybody, which just tells you that we don't need policing the way we have policing today. It's just wrong, and the people at the bunt head of it, we know who they are. But anyhow, we have to go to the other part of the program right now. I just wanted to get this in the proper context, and we're going to be talking about this a few times more, because what we're going to have is the right wing with folks like Candace Owen, who's a tool to the right wing, and others coming on and trying to somehow it's always the fault of us, right? Well, you know what? We will never allow that to stick. And those of us on the left, we have a lot of work to do. But you know, when you're righteous, when you are the one that is correct, when you are the one that's moral, when you're the ones that's showing real human values, in the long run, you know what? You win. Martin Luther King was right about that. Malcolm X was right about that. All these folks that have spoken that before, they're right about it. Anyhow, let's go ahead and talk to El Senor Paul Van Buskirk. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. Folks across the country, calls are rising to defund the police, but a push to divest resources from law enforcement is nothing new to Dr. Paul Van Buskirk. He was director of the Model Cities program and Element President Johnson's War on Poverty. And he says not much has changed in 52 years. Dr. Van Buskirk, how are you doing today? Welcome to Politics Done Right.
Well, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, look, I got this notice that about you. I must admit that I hadn't heard about you before. When I saw that, I'm like, just in time, defund the police, police brutality. All these things are now center stage in America. It has always been, but it's getting attention now. What say you?
Yes, there's I'm going to go back to the riots of '68 and what transpired at that particular time, and in the inner cities, and what were the problems at that time. They did a Kerner report with a commission to determine what were the problems in the inner cities, in the inner city communities, in the Black communities. And they concluded that one of the key problems was unemployment. There was vast unemployment. And that time, it was difficult to get a job. The economy wasn't like it has been recently in terms of job opportunities. So what happened if you were Black and you were in the inner cities and you're told that there's no job opportunities, you're unemployed, and that's the way it's going to be. And that's the way it's going to be the rest of your life. And then the second item was the schools, the poor schools, and the poor education that children were getting. And then the third item was police brutality, high crimes, and safety within their community. You know, that children could safely go to school and their streets would be safe. And then there was a lot of systemic racism in the country at that time, particularly in the South. The schools were segregated, but also there was the flight to the suburbs. The whites were fleeing to the suburbs, and there was discrimination in housing that the Blacks couldn't flee to the suburbs. And then there's legislation passed for that particular discriminatory practice. But if we go forward, 52 years forward, there's been a lot of progress for Blacks in America in terms, we have Black generals, we had a Black president, we had Black Secretary of State, Black Attorney General, we had Black CEOs. But nothing's changed in the inner city. It's the same problem as it was 52 years ago. It's the problem, again, of poor education, poor educational facilities. It's a problem of, still we have brutality in the police department, even though we've had some reforms. And it's job opportunities that They can't get firms to move into the inner cities to provide for job opportunities. So basically, if you look at the inner cities, in 52 years, not much has changed. Now, what's happened today in 2020 is in those 52 years, people accepted the fact that, you know, we're going to have poor education for our children. They call that apathy. But then that apathy turns into action. And today what it did, it turned into action with terms with the national protest units. Also turned into violent actions in terms of the arson and the looting and what have you. But I separate them out from the
I want to ask you two questions. I want to interrupt you a second because you went over quite a bit there. You talked about having a black president, a black general, and all these issues, which are true. And you talk about a lot of problems deep within the inner city, which are actually true as well. But do you also see, let's say that, I don't know, the inner city, I don't know what percentage of, let's say, black people, people of color live there. I imagine it would be on the order of 30-something% or whatever. Do you see the problem being systemic, a continual systemic problem with racism that not only holds back the inner city, but in that it holds back those people of color outside of the inner cities? That as a black man myself, I still get an apple in my throat when a cop is behind me. I'm a professional. I still get that. Don't you think that there is something else that needs to change within this society that will ultimately migrate to the inner city as well?
Yeah, there's, you know, that's a big question too. And you're talking about changing the cultural norms of a society. Right. You know, how do we do that? You know, I think we're making some progress. One, by profiling the problem. Right. Profile it, and then we can start to understand it, and then we can address it. There's a lot of other problems that are taking place here in the inner cities that are different from that. I'd like to talk about a little bit.
Sure.
If you talk, let's take Minneapolis. That's been the epicenter. Let's take the chief of police. He's black. Mm-hmm. He's a reformer. He's trying to reform his police force. The people in the inner cities got to have confidence in their police force, obviously, in order to eliminate these problems. And then you have this Derek Chauvin, who has somewhere in the order of 18 citations for misconduct, some of which are physical. That chief police knows that. He's got an officer with that many citations. He's aware of that person's there. But he can't remove them. Why can't he remove them? Because of the power structure, the political power structure, the political establishment, the mayor and the consul have made an agreement, entered an agreement, a contract with the police unions that incorporate policies that make it impossible for him to remove that man. So what happens then? Well, the people in that community, they know he's a racist, and they go to the chief and they complain, you got to get rid of this man. He says, I can't get rid of him. And they say, what are you telling us? There's nothing you can do. He said, that's right. There's nothing I can do. Well, here we go back again. There's nothing you can do. You got to live with this. So those barriers have got to be broken down as well, so that chief police can able to get rid of those bad apples.
Let me interject here, Doctor, because I think you are the one that can answer a question like this. The reason why the chief who runs the police department can do nothing about it, it's because the political leaders won't give him the wherewithal, including during contract negotiations, to have the power to do so. And the reason they don't give him that authority and give the unions that authority is that the unions have a way of getting to a particular sect of people so that they can use the law and order argument against those people who the police departments are seen responsible to police, that being people of color. We have to have power within the department that can continue to suppress those people that we have been designed to have a fear for. Your thoughts on that, if you agree with that?
Oh, I agree with you. And it's power, it's political power. And you got to get political power back into the hands of the people. That's what you got to do. You know, and that's done by the people within that community, you know, taking the destiny in their own hands, so to speak, and to organize and then to address those problems.
I love that. Yes.
And that's what it, you know, in my experience in Model Cities program is the same thing. We had to incorporate all those people that are living, you know, within those inner cities with all the problems of be it the police or poverty or education or job. You got to bring them into the decision-making process. They're going to tell you what the problem is. You know, I can sympathize with their problem, but I don't live their problem. And they can tell you what the problem is. And in the decision-making process, I've found that once they can identify and quantify the problem and then develop strategies, solutions to address that problem, you know, they're all moving in the same direction now. And then they have some political power. Now, with the unions, they have political power too because they have money. You know, they give contributions to the political power players, where the people in the community aren't organized, you know, and they aren't organized. And also, not only do they give money, but they also have a voting block as well that they give. And they have to organize and they have to, you know, exert their political muscle as well to counter that. So.
Now, I tell you, you make a very important point where you say that people have to organize. And what I've seen recently is that we've been organizing, and I see a sort of a flashpoint that has occurred, and that is around this term, defund the police. And ironically, what has happened as well is this move against this whole order has become very multi-ethnic, multi-racial, multi-age, that I think speaks to what you just spoke about, which is the people organizing. How can they do so with that moniker, defund the police, in your opinion?
Well, the important thing is they're profiling the problem. And then we got to profile the solution too, as well. You know, right now, to defund the police is kind of just a generic term. It's
right.
General. We don't have specificity in that.
Right.
Excuse me. in order to do that, now we have to really kind of do is to what I call document the problem. So everybody, there's no question about what the problem is. It's well documented, and then we have to do is determine the strategies and solutions to address that problem. And I think about Ray Kelly. He was a police commissioner in New York City under Mayor Bloomberg, and he had a 63% approval rating from the Black community. He spent a lot of time just walking in the Black community, talking to people in the Black community, and I think what happened, and I can only speculate here, but if I talk to the people in the Black community, the mothers, their children are going to school, you know, the fathers looking for a job, and ask them what they want, what does that mean, defunding the police? What does that mean to you? I think they would say they want law enforcement, they want safety, but they also want to have confidence in their police that are carrying out those duties as well. I think what Ray recommended, and I think they would think, is one, they should have intense psychological testing of new recruits. That was one thing that he offered. The second thing he was offered, it was the problem with the unions in terms of not be able to get rid of the bad apples. And he also said in New York with the Civil Service Commission, he'd get rid of them, Civil Service Commission reinstate them. So he said that problem had to be addressed. The third one, he said, is he thinks that they should be college graduates because they're more sympathetic to the problems of racial discrimination. And right now, I guess in New York City, more than 50% of their members are minority, members of the minority community. And now they have to be a high school graduate, and they have to have 60 hours of college credit, which is normally the junior college law enforcement program. Now, in order for that to happen in the inner cities, you know, we had to have a decent education for the children in that district. And we have what we call choice, where they have charter schools as an alternative. The problem is the political establishment's against that. So those barriers have to be broken down. But I think we have to go into the inner cities. We have to talk to those people and determine what's their interpretation of that. What's their meaning, and how do they see that and want to address that, and how do they see the future in terms of actually solving that problem, their problems.
Now, it's interesting because we just had another police shooting in Atlanta yesterday or Friday night. And this is sort of an offside from the complete premise of the discussion here. But don't it surprise you that after the killing of Chauvin in Minnesota, killing that on Floyd by Chauvin in Minnesota, that police officers would be more hesitant in a nonviolent confrontation with a suspect, if you will, and not use deadly force? If you weren't of the mindset that nothing's going to happen, wouldn't you say, didn't you find that pretty strange?
Absolutely. In fact, it's almost unbelievable. You know, if I was a police officer and I was trying to arrest a black person and he ran away from me, the last thing I would do is shoot him. And I'd let him run, you know.
It is amazing that the sensitivity to the times, all of that was disregarded. But anyhow, Doctor, you were talking about, you worked on the Model Cities program. Right now, one of the issues that people talk about all the time is, where is the money going to come from? And I'm a political activist. I'm also a progressive person. And we all think, or we all know, the money's out there. The money is out there. However, the way it's apportioned, the way it's taxed, the way it's allowed to grow, the way the system works on who profits on what is actually an issue. I don't know if that is within your purview or not, but I'd like to talk a little bit about that before we get into your book, which I just noticed you have a new book out. So tell me a little bit about your thoughts on funding and the way our economic system in general apportions the spoils.
Well, just really briefly, the economic system in terms of apportioning the revenue is the wheel that squeaks the most gets the grease.
Terrible.
I think that sums it up.
Yes, yes.
To be honest with you, you know, if you got a strong lobby and you got a lot of money, you know, you can make things happen. Yeah, you know, yeah, you're right. You know, the money's there. It's just a question of is the commitment there?
Right.
That's what we need is the commitment. You know, we can identify the problems, we can identify the solutions and the strategies, but we need the resources to make that work. And those resources have to come from both the public and the private sector. Particularly the private sector in terms of firms willing to relocate in the inner cities to provide job opportunities. Also, you're supporting alternate schools for opportunities for Black mothers that have their children get a safe and decent education. But the revenue is there. It's just a question of political commitment.
You know, what is very interesting is that I think this pandemic showed something in the early days, in the days before I became a full-time activist. I always talked about my garbage man having a lot more worth than my stockbroker. And it was interesting because people would laugh at that when you make a statement like that. And now with this pandemic occurring, the people that they most want to see is that grocery store open with cashiers, that delivery person coming to their doors with their food that they're not willing to go eat at the restaurants, or that they can't go eat at the restaurants. The doctors, I mean, we're really seeing the worth right now. And in seeing that worth, we're seeing how much within the inner city, which you are well apt at, how much those people in the inner cities who still have to go out to work, because those are the jobs many of them do, what their real worth is to society, which should justify, in my opinion, you tell me otherwise, much more investments in the inner city. And it's not a gift. They are holding up this economy.
Yeah, you know, historically, the investments were in the inner city, going back historically in our country, because that's where the labor force was.
Right.
And that's where you had, you know, Ford plants were in the middle of the cities, you know. And in my community, the textile plants were in the middle of the cities, because that's where the labor was, you know. But you're right, there, you know, we have now the opportunity zones, and hopefully that will create some investment into the inner cities and develop some firms and industry to create jobs. Now, I'm just going to tell you a little problem about that. You got Walmart in Chicago,
Right.
South Chicago. Walmart, in order to get approval from the city to put the store in there, they had to pay off the unions to get in there.
Yes.
You know, so who wants to move to an inner city when they got to pay the unions off to get in there? That's corruption in itself. You know, you should be trying to entice them to come in. You know, you should be offering things for them to come into the community. So we got to get rid of a lot of these constraints that are preventing all this from happening in terms of investing in the inner community. And we got to be able to encourage it by you know, they want to give big multi-million-dollar subsidies to Amazon, you know, and to the other large Fortune 500. Why can't we do that?
But let me push back a little bit, Doctor. You just mentioned about Walmart having to pay off the unions to get into certain parts. I think you said Chicago, and that's understood. They shouldn't have had to pay off the unions, but shouldn't they really? I think what we are talking about here, we don't want Walmart wages in Chicago, right? We want real wages.
No, that's true, but you want a Walmart in there so you can go shopping.
Yeah, we sure do. We need them both. But I mean, how do we get them? I mean, what you just told me was a union corruption is what you just told me. If the union gets paid off, but the people are still making Walmart wages, that's a union payoff. That didn't help the people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the one thing we have to do with the inner cities too is we should be putting our junior colleges in there. So now they can get at least a decent education and that would provide them with a job, be it a dental technician or law enforcement or whatever the programs are for those inner cities. They certainly have a population large enough to even support one, to be honest.
Right.
With you. So it's that kind of thing. We got to make it a community again. It's got to have all those things that makes the community, you know, live.
Community, yes. Okay, Dr. Van Buskirk, I always get the name a little bit
Oh, you got it
off.
right.
Did I get it right? Great. Tell me a little bit about your book, Big Mike, Uncle Dan, and Me.
Yeah, Big Mike.
You have it with you?
Uncle Dan and Me. You know, it's a story how I beat the New York State 20th century most corrupt political machine.
Tell me about it.
It's really a human interest story as well as a political story. It's about a community that was controlled by a machine for 40 years. I was born and brought up in it. I lived in it up until I was 28. I lived under a political machine. Our schools were in terrible shape. Teachers had to kick back to the machine. The infrastructure was falling apart. The parks were falling apart. The playgrounds were falling apart. But because of apathy and people would say, this is the way it is, so this is the way you got to live, and you got to accept this. And because of that apathy, that went on for 40 years until I came along. And I just couldn't believe that we were destined to have to live like this in really a totalitarian state in what we're supposed to be a democracy. I just wouldn't accept it. So it's a story about how I pushed back on the machine, organized the community, exposed their corruption. There's a lot of betrayal in it when you get into politics, violence, you know. Actually, there was an attempt to kill me and my son. Back then you had a press that supported the machine because they got the illegal ads from the machine.
And the kickbacks.
You know, just all kinds of corruption. in our community at that time, the Catholic Church were 90% Catholic, and the church then was totalitarian. And if you were a member of the church, you support the machine. And by the way, the machine supported the church schools, but not the public schools. So anyway, it's a good story for anybody that's interested in politics, interested in how a community could, after years of apathy, turn into action. I have a chapter on that, apathy to action, and all the forces you're going to be up against with the political power players, with the institutions, and the corruption, and the betrayal within your own organization that takes place once you get into power. And then once the reforms are put into effect and the reformers leave, what happens to the movement? So anyway, you can get it at Books A Million has the print copy right now, and so does Book Baby in their store. Amazon has the
e-copy.
Yeah, the e-copy.
Ebook, yeah.
Ebook, because of the pandemic, there's such a demand for food and supplies that their warehouses don't have room now for
the books. Yeah,
but it'll be there in a few months. But you really enjoy reading it. It's everything that ever happens in politics: the good, the bad, the ugly, the tragic, and what have you.
Well, I'll have a link to that book in the blog post that's accompanying this interview. This interview should be going live pretty soon. Now, Dr. Van Buskirk question, and that is, what question didn't I ask you that you would have liked me to have asked?
Well, I wish I had more time to prepare for that one. I think the question I would like to ask you is, where do you think we'll be 5 years from now?
Well, 5 years from now, I am a very positive person. I think this is going to be our transitional year. Things are going to be horrendous. They're going to be terribly bad. I think good people like yourself and others are going to have good ideas to stand up to so that we can have some meat to put on the bones. And if we can get rid of that word that you speak about in your new book, apathy, and get more people engaged, I think things are going to get better. It's going to be a rough 2 years, but I am positive that the young people that I'm hanging with, the millennials, the young Gen Xers, and by God, those Gen Zs are going to pull us through.
Well, I agree with you. I'm an optimist too. And I think you're absolutely correct. And we've done this through the generations, by the way, over time. And it's a cycle, and it's unfortunate you have to wait 52 years. It happens, I can only live so long.
Well, come on, Doc. You are seasoned, and you know what? You are still here, and you're still giving good advice. So, Dr. Paul Van Buskirk, thank you so kindly for having been with Politics Done Right, and keep up your great work, brother.
No, thank you very much.
I'm Egberto Willies, host of Politics Done Right, an independent news program. I post several news videos of interest every day. I ask you so kindly to subscribe to my channel. And it happens. I couldn't get the clicker to work. Anyhow, now it's time. It is time for us to go ahead and hit those messages. I first want to talk to. I'm going to scroll to. First of all, let me welcome everybody. Deidre Scott, welcome aboard. Rose Williams, welcome aboard. Danielle Ledoux, welcome aboard. Lawrence Sims, Roberto Lewis, Robert Wheatley. You're the one that I want to talk to, but let me keep welcoming some more folks. Vincere Outmodi, Vinzir Outmodi. I think that's the way you say your name. Forgive me if I bastardized it. Then there is Norman Reynolds. How are you doing, my brother? Let's see if there's anybody else. Fabio Pasos, welcome aboard. Let's see. Okay, let me get to that first one that I want. Wheatley, if you're still here. Robert Waddley, you said, show the real video. You know exactly why you shut it off. I shut it off because I didn't want to play the 3 gunshots, 2 that hit Mr. Brooks, and 1 that went into a stray bullet that he shot into a car that almost killed a person in another car. I didn't want to show that. I didn't try to mislead in any way. Mr. Brooks was resisting arrest, Resisting arrest is not a death sentence. I have videos where I show white guys with knives going at police officers, with broken glass going at police officers, where they have chased around neighborhoods and they're still alive. I included a video that went viral that showed juxtapose where a white guy is beating the crap out of cops with a baton. He takes their car, which is a deadly weapon in the way he used it, and he's still alive. And then I put it next to this one, and he's dead. And he's dead for running away with a non-lethal device, a taser, that he only took out of that guy's hands because he didn't want to be tased. He didn't want to be treated like an animal because, like I said, the way that was handled by the police officers themselves. Again, I am not trying to protect this guy from being 1.08 in his blowing in breathalyzer, okay? But that is that is like a little bit above being drunk. And we know how many people get off from doing that. So I am not justifying this guy at all. But what I'm saying, let's be real here. So Mr. Robert Wadley, you are completely wrong in the assumption that you're trying to put out there that we're trying to hide anything. That is absolutely not so. Okay. Deidre Scott says, the police are there to hunt. When in minority communities, people, they say the other, powerful and real. Yes, they are there to hunt. And Daniel Ledo took exception. He called me an idiot for saying that the cops are there to hunt. The way you see them talk, though, I watched the entire 41 minutes of that tape. The entire 41 minutes. And of those 41 minutes, they continuously disregarded this guy talking about his daughter, the human part about it. We're a human police officer. If this police officer was humane, this guy was in the area for the birthday of his daughter. If we were doing real community policing, the cop would have said something like, "Sir, look, you've had too much to drink. I don't want you driving. Your daughter don't want you driving in this condition. Let me take you home," like they do here in Kingwood. Let me take you home, and then you can come and pick your car up later on. Take you home because you're right around the corner where some of your relatives live. And do the good police. That would serve two purposes. First of all, that would enhance the police image in that community. And two, it would have been not a dead man. Okay? They already spent 41 minutes out there in the parking lot. Why not do something good? Why not do something humane? Why not do so? And the reason why they don't do something good, the reason why they don't do something humane is they do not consider those people human. They consider them less than human unless we hit the truth. And that's why the young people are rebelling now. They're like, these are my friends. We are all together. That's what it's all about. Stop thinking that way. I'm going to go to the bottom because I'm going to be running out of time pretty soon. Anyhow, Vince said, to ignore facts and respond based on emotion is simple, not the right thing to do. And to do this based on false sense of guilt or outrage while tearing apart our nation is worse. If, and I'm going to say this, if what is happening to people of color, to black people in America from cops sanctioned by our tax dollars, and all the people in this country do not rebel, the country does not deserve peace. Mr. Vincent Automori, Vincere Outmori, if what is occurring to a group of people, it is no different than when we had slavery, and to get rid of slavery, we had a civil war to get rid of slavery because a particular sect was in bondage. And do remember that we didn't have a slavery war because we loved black people. We had a war on slavery because the nation was coming apart. And to save the nation, we had to purge the cancer. And this cancer as well has to be purged. And if it's not done peacefully, and that's why you see the government reacting as fast as it is, because Gen Zs, Gen X, younger Gen Xs, and all the others are starting to see the evil within, and that is what have them activated. They don't want the cancer to spread. They don't want it to spread. Bruce Pollard, angry at Atlanta. You should be. Okay, let's see. Arsenal of young people in my warrior circle. Most baby boomers aren't as cool and woke as I am. That's why, everybody, why do you hang with the young folk? You know why? Because that's where change is coming. I am not going to exert my efforts. I'll talk to everybody, but I'm not going to exert my activism efforts on folks that really just want their social security and care about nobody else. Care about not what's coming behind them. Don't care that if you take it all, unless you change the economic model, you're hurting the future. Vinsore says, so we must analyze what cities where these incidents are occurring and hold these leaders to account. No, it's happening everywhere, sir. It's a police thing. It's not in specific cities, Brother Vincere Automodi. It's all over the damn country. This is in little towns, big towns. It's a police thing. That's what it is, a police thing. Norman had a thing I want to read. I saw Norman had a very good message in there. Norman says, defund the police is what was done in the opioid crisis. It took money from policing the problem to addressing the underlying issues with socio-economical and medical issues that blew this up in the predominantly white community. Do you see the analysis that Norman just did there? That is the kind of analysis I want out of people. When it came to having that particular community, they defunded the police. They defunded the police so that they would not have to negatively police their people. That is what needs to be done. Norman Prescient, sir. Norman Prescient. Fabio, Google, when did the U.S. become a corporation? Brother, since the inception of the United States, we've been a corporation. And Citizens United and a few others made it more prescient. But we can go into that another day, my brother. Let's see what else is there that I need to take before I got to go out of here in a minute. Okay, look. Tomorrow I'll be able to take phone calls, I think, because right now I know I had a whole lot to cover, so I didn't power up Zoom. But tomorrow I'll power up Zoom. Here's the deal. We have to get with the program. Things are changing fast. You have to learn how to disregard those people that are not really interested in real change, that are just trying to maintain the status quo. Okay, let me see real quickly. I want to read what he says. Atlanta has been controlled by, it doesn't matter about Democratic or Republican. That's not what we're talking about, Vince. Get off of the right-wing stuff, sir. I got a lot of right-wing listeners, and I want them to stay. But you're wrong. You're simply wrong. You're simply wrong. It has nothing to do with Democratic or Republican. Democratic mayors, Democratic governors are still run by right-wing evil police unions that are generally racist or KKK related. Even the union here in Houston for the longest time had a KKK alliance, as much as it's a Democratic city. And that is because of power structures. You have to understand these things. I know the right wing will tell you all that stuff. Democratic control, Democratic control, Democratic control. You know what? That makes absolutely no sense. But folks, I got to get out of here real quick, but I want to remind you, please go ahead and remember to subscribe to our program, patreon.com/politics done right. That is spelled patreon.com/politics done right. I'll go ahead and put that into the stream so that you can just click on it and become subscribers if you have the wherewithal, okay? And likewise, if you go ahead and you can also do that at paypal.me. That is paypal.me/politics done right. Again, paypal.me/politics done right. Now, you see, Mr. Vincemodi is putting a whole lot of all the cities where these incidents occurred that are Democratic cities. Let me remind him of something. Democratic cities are where you will find a preponderance of black people and people of color. Okay, more so than these other cities, which gives you the reason why you'll see that. And then these cities are then also controlled by police unions that are generally on the other side. So Vincent Modi, while it may be interesting for you to put those false statistics out, it makes absolutely no sense. Folks, I got to get out of here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. There's a store. By the way, go to store.politicsdoneright.com. Store.politicsdoneright.com. I have 3 new products out there. Store.politicsdoneright.com. I should put that in the, I need to put that in there before I go. Oops, I'm running a little bit late. There you go. Store.politicsdoneright.com. Folks, thank you so kindly for being here, both my Republican and Democratic listeners, and everything else. Thank you so kindly for being here. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know how I end this baby. I am what? Out. Welcome to Politics Done Right. I am your host, Egberto Willies. This is a progressive program that will take the mystery out of politics. This is the program that will encourage you to make sure government becomes we the people. Whether you are liberal, progressive, conservative, or otherwise,